So there's something I just realized. This is probably the first year in my life where I'm not enrolled in any school program. And it's the year where I've learned the most about everything, really. The most about myself, the most about how the world works, how the economy works, how markets work, how people work. But it's the first year that I'm not enrolled in any school program. The reason I'm making this video is I don't think that's a coincidence. I've really taken the time to think about this in depthly, and it goes further than the whole school is this indoctrination camp and all of that. And I think it has come to the point where we've even forgotten the basics of life and replace them with just go to school. Yeah. Now we're all very aware that, we don't really learn much in school. That's not a wild discovery. And even when we were in school, a lot of the complaints was that we were just wasting time. And now that if you're coming of age, you're realizing how precious that time was. It just stings a little different to know, it just stings a little bit more to know that things would have been different. I like the Einstein quote where he says, you need to ensure that your education is not interrupted by your schooling. And this guy was spitting facts back in like the 20th century, literally telling people that you need to realize that education and school are two different things. I mean, I don't know what the statistic is, but I came across it somewhere in my feed, and it was pretty much like, I don't know, like 42% of like graduates never pick up another book in their life or something like that. It's gotten to the point where we won't even read anything if it's not school based. Every riot, the malls, the shops, all of them are stripped dry. But then the libraries and the bookstores are left as they were. Now here's the thing. We don't even have that many libraries and bookstores when you think about it. I mean, think about the stereotypical town in Kenya. There's, I don't know how many bars and I don't know how many kiosks, and I don't know, there's always some weird car wash, all of those things, but there's never really a library. Not unlike, like Europe, all these other countries where they have their priorities straight. But when you look at it here, the school system has just been another prison detainment facility, because people just, there was nowhere else to take your children. And there was no other institution to impart skills on them that are necessary to succeed in life. Now, here's the thing. And it's not some revolutionary thing that I'm talking about here, but you have to come to terms with it, with the fact that school doesn't necessarily want to make you successful. I'm not talking about the whole, you've probably seen it, always do A students do this, and B students do this, and C students do this. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that everyone comes out a shell of who they once were. The point of school, they don't even care whether, it's just a grading system, it's a metric system. Yeah, it's just to keep track, just to keep score, the same way money is. But the main thing is to leave you a shell of who you once were. So the uniforms are the same, you all sleep at the same time, you all read the same books, you all do the same exam. Everything is the same, the same, the same. You follow the same timetable, do the same things. And let's be real, like perhaps in the first years we can hold on, but it's like what? It's like 8 plus 4 plus like 16 years, let's say 20 years. Let's just stop it all off on at 20 years on average that we're given to these institutions. They don't even care about us. Because the reality of it is that if they actually did, they have you for all this time. A vast majority of people leaving the school system would be better off. But people will say, oh, at least I know how to read and write. That's basic. That's like saying you know how to type. Or, we wouldn't speak in English if it wasn't for... That took 20 years. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of it was not just wasting time. It wasn't just about, locking you up and all that. It's about the fact that they want to strip you down from who you were in the beginning, who you actually are. Take all of those components, throw them out the bin, and leave you as this box so that you can get out of here. You can, go look for your tiny little job and pay your taxes and shut up, never ask any questions. Just be in your cubicle or in your tiny little house, and you might get a few, if you save up a little bit of money, you might get a few nice treats by the end of the year. And then when you're 65, we'll kick you out and you will roll over and die, and the process will rinse and repeat. But finally, we're seeing a mass disruption. And I'm not talking about the whole AI and like all of that. I'm talking about the fact that people have just decided that, you know what, it's not worth it. We've seen what it's doing. We've seen what it's done to us. And we've said that the game is not worth it. And so I'd rather be my own unique self and figure out my own thing, because at the end of the day, even if you were to try and succeed, given that traditional 844 path, there is no more track that the train can pass through. It's finished. The system has crumbled on itself. It's kind of like a multi-level marketing scheme or pyramid scheme. There's only that many people who can join the pyramid scheme and let it continue growing. So it crumbles on itself. Now, perhaps the worst thing that happens in school is the lack of critical thinking. Now, this one really hits home because for the longest time, there's this association with having degrees and certificates with being really smart. But when I look at it, you can't certify critical thinking. You can only look at somebody's life and say, yeah, they know what they're doing with their life. So that's probably somebody who has sat down and planned and gone through the various phases of execution in order to make sure that their life is better off today than it was a few years ago. That's not something that is taught in school. For example, in school, you're taught that, you'll finish this and then you'll get a job. There's this, linear form of thinking. But then that's not how life is. So even the fundamental, at its core, it doesn't really work. So this notion that just because, oh my God, you're a PhD, you have a PhD, just because of that, you're some expert on life, and that's what they sell to us. You should listen to me, I'm an expert. But then most of the PhDs are broke. I don't know what the actual figure it is, but trust me, the unemployment and underemployment rate of PhDs in Kenya is quite high. And what is happening right now, especially because of the job market, postgraduate studies are being sold like hotcake. I don't know what country it is. I don't know whether it's the UK or something, where postgraduate students have now outpaced undergraduate students. So there's more people looking for all these postgraduate degrees than the undergraduate degrees. And this is the whole moving of the goalpost that the school system really likes. A high school certificate probably got you a good job back in the day, whenever that was. But right now, you need a master's and three other certifications just to get your foot in the door. And all of this, like I said, is just to cram you into this tiny, neat little box where you don't think about, all the government debt. You don't think about the collapse of the family. You don't think about how, they're using this new digital media to indoctrinate children into harmful behavior. You're not thinking about the fact that so many things not to think about. So anyway, just coming from this, I said that for me it's my first year not being in the traditional school system. Yet it's a year that I've learned the most in terms of how the world works, how structures work, how people work, and most importantly, how I work. And I think that's the greatest education, because we often end up in this rat race where we want to read the next, good book, and we want the video that will change it all. And this once I do this, then I'll discover how the stock market works, and I'll discover how, and I'll be rich and all this. And we forget that the basic building block of that, none of that can happen if you don't actually understand yourself. And that's the thing of being shelled up in the school system for so long, where you forget something as basic as how to manage your own time. I made a video on this recently on my TikTok. I was like, we know how to follow timetables, but we don't know how to manage time. We know how to, wake up and clock in for an employer, because from the moment you were in kindergarten, you were told to sit down, shut up and listen, and teacher knows best. The teacher knows best. Yeah, you shut up and listen. Here's the curriculum. Cram that, it's going to be in the test. So we go through all of that, and I need you to ask yourself, how many goals of your own, in your own pursuit, have you set and actually executed them? Because there's a whole self-improvement industry that is so hell-bent on, you just setting goals and all that. But nobody ever asks, what are the habits necessary to actually execute on those goals? And those habits, to be honest, you can't just turn around. You're not a speedboat, you're a ship, yeah? Speedboats, they can turn around quickly and just kind of like move on. But ships need time to turn around. And your compass has been misaligned from the very beginning. So you've been told to fill other people's objectives, your teacher, the government. So when you come out here, you don't ask any questions, and your employer tells you this is how things go. And the government tells you, you vote on this date, so that's when you vote. Yeah, you wake up at this time, you be at this place at this time, that's it, no questions asked. But finally, we're seeing the wreckage of that system. Because Gen Zs have said, to hell with it. It's not a coincidence that everyone who comes out of the school system thinks the same. And the rebels were actually right. The ones who dropped out and figured out their own life, whether they have the material markers of success that you were taught are important, like a big house and a big bank account and all of that. They have figured out their own lives. So because of that, I need you to look at life differently. And I need you to realize all the successful people have different stories. None of them copied each other. Zuckerberg didn't copy what Gates did. Gates built operating systems. Zuckerberg built social media. Steve Jobs built gadgets. They're all in the same field, technology, but they all did different things because they can think. You come here and you realize every time somebody starts, a sugarcane business, now it's all everywhere. Yeah, everybody, once somebody starts this business, because everybody thinks the same. And it's a product of our system. And to be successful, to achieve the success that is necessary for you to be actually free in this life, you have to be your own self. You have to kind of like understand not just how the world works, not just how markets work, not just how people work, not just how the company formation. You can understand all of that. But if you don't understand yourself, if you can't set a goal and achieve it for your own self, then you'll never really be successful. The reason why I used Steve Jobs and so on is because those are the most visible markers. Yeah, they're the stories that are told. But you can look at it in terms of anyone who you meet who has an ounce of creativity or uniqueness. And most of the time, they are almost always successful in their own little way because they figured out life for themselves. And that's the thing that I think is most important. To not just take life for, what they tell you it is, what they give you, but to think of life as this thing that you shape it, that you have agency and you can change it. And like I always try and tell myself, saying all these videos, don't try and change the world. The world is fucked up. But maybe, just maybe, you might be able to change yourself.